So I'm going to be reading chapter 17 for Touching Spirit Bear. Before they went to sleep, Edwin showed Cole how to suspend the coolers of fresh food from high branches in case bears visited during the night. Tomorrow night, we'll dance, he said. What do you mean dance? Cole said. We'll build a fire and dance our feelings. Edwin offered no more explanation, so Cole didn't ask. But long after Edwin and Garvey fell asleep, Cole lay awake in the tent listening to their deep, regular breathing. The hard ground made his hip and arm ache. Outside, the wind strained through the treetops, and deep in the trees, a branch broke. Memory of the spirit bear flashed into Cole's mind. Was the bear still out there, and was it angry? Or was it only curious? Cole tried to fall asleep, but troubled thoughts hounded him. What was his mother doing right now? Was she thinking about him too? And what about his father? Did he care about anything other than himself? Cole thought about his own troubles with the law and about all his troubles at school. He thought about Edwin and about Garvey and about Peter. He truly hoped that Peter would be okay. As he tossed and turned, Cole found himself growing angry again. He tried to fight back the familiar rage with his memory of touching the spirit bear, but nothing seemed to ward off the bitterness and frustration that flooded his mind. Edwin had been right when he said that anger was never forgotten. Cole thought about his past and also about his future. Tomorrow he would begin building a shelter under the watchful eyes of Edwin and Garvey. Even with his bum arm, he'd probably do all the work while they sat around on their butts like they had done today. And then what? What would happen after that? After they left? Cole imagined the cold, the rain, carrying water, keeping a fire going, doing schoolwork, and long, long hours of being alone and bored. That wasn't much to celebrate. Cole's angry thoughts repeated themselves like a stuck record until finally he slipped into a troubled sleep. Almost immediately, a hand shook him awake. Get up and come with me, grunted Edwin. What time is it? Cole grumbled, his head still numb with fatigue. Where are we going? Hurry, Edwin ordered. It's almost morning. Cole clawed his way out of the sleeping bag and fumbled into his shirt and pants. The icy air had made his clothes stiff and he shivered. He heard Garvey still snoring loudly as he crawled out into the brisk air. The faint glow of dawn showed over the trees and dimmed the stars as Cole started to pull on his tennis shoes. Edwin stopped him. Put these on, he said, holding out a pair of knee-high rubber boots. Tennis shoes aren't much good up there except around camp. Cole was still pulling on the second rubber boot when Edwin headed out. Let's go before the sun comes up, Edwin said, stepping off at a brisk pace. He had a small pack slung over his shoulder. What's the big deal? Asked Cole. His stiff joints ached as he hobbled to wake up. Morning shouldn't be wasted. By the time they reached the stream, Edwin breathed heavily. His pot belly definitely wasn't from too much hiking. Without stopping, he waded into the water and used the edge of the stream as a pathway to avoid the heavy underbrush. He picked his footing deliberately along the slippery bottom, working his way upstream. Cole followed, splashing along stiffly in the gathering daylight. You tossed and turned half the night, Edwin said. Yeah, I couldn't sleep. Any reason? Cole didn't answer right away. Just thinking, he said. When Edwin didn't reply, he added, My mind gets to thinking and won't quit. Like it's chewing on tough meat. It won't swallow a thought and it won't spit it out. It just keeps chewing it over and over. And the thinking makes you mad, right? Cole nodded. It's like my mind wants to be mad at something and it won't quit. Even now I'm mad. Edwin stopped beside a long rocky slope that rose several hundred feet to their right above the shallow valley. On their left, the stream flattened out into a large, calm, crystal-clear pond. Upstream, about 100 yards, the stream gushed through a rock gorge, calming as it flowed into the still pool. We're going swimming, said Edwin, dropping his small pack to the ground. He slipped off his jacket and shirt. Are you nuts? Exclaimed Cole. It's freezing. Trust me, said Edwin. To do what? Kill ourselves? Edwin kept stripping. Half of being trusted is to trust. He reached down and picked up a thin stick. Cole eyed the stick warily as Edwin waded out into the clear pond. Hesitantly, he removed his clothes, glancing again at Edwin, who had already swum over and seated himself, chest deep, on a rock ledge across the pond. Edwin's eyes were closed, and he held the small stick against his shoulder patiently. He breathed deliberately as if unaware of the cold. Slowly, Cole waded in, gasping at the icy water as the icy water rose around his chest. He held his breath as he pushed off the bottom and swam the last 20 feet. Cripes, it's cold, he exclaimed as he pulled himself up beside Edwin on the underwater rocks. Edwin remained still, eyes closed. Cole hugged his arms to his chest but couldn't stop his teeth from chattering. The water nearly covered his shoulders. He felt stupid and vulnerable. What was he doing a million miles from nowhere, sitting in a freezing pond beside a bizarre Tlingit Indian with a stick? What's the stick for? He asked loudly. Let me turn the page. So you can see that we are right at the top of the left-hand side. Edwin opened his eyes as if coming out of a sleep. Calmly, he held up the stick. The right end of this stick is your happiness. The left end is your anger, Edwin said. He handed the stick to Cole. Break off the left end and get rid of your anger. Shivering, Cole took the stick in his fists and broke off one side. Edwin shook his head. You broke off the left end, but a left end still exists. Go ahead, break it off again. Again, Cole broke the stick, and again Edwin shook his head. Why did you leave the left end on the stick when I asked you to break it off? That's stupid, Cole muttered. The left end will always be there. Edwin nodded. People spend lifetimes breaking their stick to get rid of anger. But always anger remains, and they think they've failed. So, if I can't ever get rid of my anger, why even try? Cole asked. Edwin reached and took the remaining piece of stick from Cole's hand. His fingers toyed with the wood as he looked up at the sunrise that had begun to glow warmly over the trees. Then he glanced over his shoulder at the dark storm clouds that hung menacingly on the opposite horizon. He waved the stick. Is the sky sunny or is it stormy? He asked. Cole looked both ways and shrugged. Depends on which way you look. If you looked only at the clouds, what would you say? Stormy. Yes, and what would you say if you looked only at the sunrise? Cole's body had grown numb from the icy water and his teeth chattered uncontrollably. Sunny, he grunted impatiently. Edwin waved the stick in a circle. The sky, this stick, hot dogs, life, it's all the same. It's what you make of it. What you focus on becomes reality. Everybody carries anger inside, but also happiness. Those who focus on anger will always be angry. Those who focus on happiness will... I don't have a choice, Cole interrupted, speaking almost desperately. I can't help it. I don't go to bed and decide I'm going to stay awake tonight and be mad. Have you been angry since you entered this pool today? No, said Cole, 'cause I'm freezing my butt off. Edwin smiled. When I was banished to this island, I came to this pond to get rid of my anger. You just said you can't get rid of anger, Cole argued. This pond gave me a choice. I could focus on the left end or the right end of the stick. I could focus on the sunrise or the dark clouds. It was my choice. So unless I go somewhere and freeze every morning, I'll keep getting mad, huh? Edwin smiled but shook his head. You only look at the left end of the stick and at the cloudy sky now because your experiences in life have made that a habit. Happiness, like anger, is also a habit. You learn to be happy one day at a time. But habits change hard. This pond will help you. What do I do in the winter? Cole asked. Edwin wrinkled his forehead. Winter will be the hardest. Weather is bad, days short, the fire warm, and the stream too bitter to soak. You'll find yourself wanting to stay inside beside the fire where it's easy for your anger to fester like a devil's club thorn. You'll stare into the flames and remember bad times. In the winter, you'll need to find other ways of looking at the right end of the stick. Cole felt himself growing dizzy from the cold and was about to protest when Edwin stood up and headed to shore. Gladly, Cole followed. On shore, Edwin pulled out towels for each of them and they dressed in silence. Cole noticed that much of the stiffness and pain had left his joints. Even his arm felt better. He turned to Edwin. You know, the stuff you just told me makes more sense than all the weird things the counselors and psychologists have told me in school and at the detention center. Edwin tapped Cole's shoulder with the broken stick. That's because those people still think you can get rid of the left end of the stick. And that concludes chapter 17.